Hey everyone, this is Brown at IF Brown, and tonight we are going to be talking about Acorna, the Unicorn Girl, by Anne McCaffrey and Margaret Ball. So, this was a collaborative effort between two popular female science fiction and fantasy writers. Anne McCaffrey is arguably best known for the Dragon Riders of Pern series, and Margaret Ball is known for, amongst other things, the Tamai series. And I haven't read anything by either of these authors before, and this was my first time reading anything by either of them. But I'm very grateful to my stepmom, Barbara, who was kind enough to let me borrow this book because I've had an on again, off again interest in reading Anne McCaffrey's stuff, mainly because Barbara had several of the Dragon Riders of Pern novels, as well as other books by Anne McCaffrey, and she was always kind enough to let me, look at the cover art and just kind of get lost in the pictures, whenever I was younger. And there was even a book that she had called The Dragon Lover's Guide to Pern, which had several fantastic illustrations of the dragons and the people of Pern, as well as other life forms on the planet of Pern. And I remember fondly spending hours just looking through that particular book, and using some of the artwork in that book to kind of inspire some of my own pieces, from way back when I was actively drawing. But anyway, though, so fast forward to now, and as I mentioned, Barbara was kind enough to loan me this book, and I'm very grateful to her for having done so, because this was a really good book to read, and I definitely want to check out more books by Anne McCaffrey as well as Margaret Ball in the future. And so thank you, Barbara. But anyway, Acorna, it's a science fiction story, but there's like an echo of a fantasy element in there, but at the same time, it also deals with a lot of relatable human themes on a universal level. And I think that's one of the reasons why I found this story to be so relatable at certain portions. And also, I would say if someone were to just randomly pick this book up, I mean, one, it's a good standalone novel, but it's also a good introduction to what eventually became a series called the Acorna universe. Anne McCaffrey kind of spearheaded the series, and there were originally I believe there were 7 novels. But there were 3 spin-off novels that came after the initial series ended. So it's a pretty good series in terms of how long it's been going. And I'm just very glad to have finally gotten around to reading something new like this. And anyway, the story of Acorna, it begins, it's way in the future. Humanity has colonized, several, planets, throughout the galaxy. And the initial focus is a group of 3 prospectors, Callum, Gil, and Rafik, who have worked together for years, mining asteroids and making a pretty good living doing so. But on one of their latest excursions, they find a mysterious object within their latest haul, and it turns out that this object is an escape pod of some sort, and it's not of human origin, because there's writing on there that is alien in nature, and also because of the metal readings that were taken on the pod, they have characteristics that are atypical of something that you'd find, say, in a human-made craft. But they find one little girl inside of the pod, and she's humanoid, but she also has horse-like feet and a horn on her head. And she, they don't know who she is. They don't know where she came from. And she's speaking in another language, and they don't know what the language is, but they bring her aboard their ship and do their level best to take care of her and try and raise her, and try and keep an eye out for if maybe her folks are somewhere somewhere around the galaxy looking for her. But they can't find anyone who knows who she is, and so they do their level best to raise her as their own. And over time, she proves to be not only fast learning, but fast growing as well. Within the span of, say, only a couple of years, she goes from a baby girl to a young adult. And so, I mean, if there was any doubt of her being something more than human, all those doubts are gone. But she also is able to learn their languages, the language of English as well as any other language that they have access to on board their ship, as well as any language that they speak. And so she becomes very fluent in the language of humans. And she also proves to be an asset when it comes to, say, the work in mining asteroids, because she has some sort of sixth sense when it comes to what kind of ores are a part of various asteroids. And as a result, they're able to make significantly better finds, whereas prior to meeting her, they would have completely missed some stuff, even though they have all this wondrous technology to help them find the ore they're looking for. But she also is able to clean out, say, contaminated water and heal minor wounds, it seems, because of her horn. And so at this point, Callum and Gil and Rafik, I mean, they know they've got something on their hands that is incredible, but they also have come to, raise her as one of their own, and have named her Acorna, and mainly because of her horn. But they know that there's going to be some questions that are going to be directed their way once they get to back to civilization. But they also know that they don't want to just throw Acorna to the wolves. And so when they do get back to civilization, it turns out that their concerns were valid, because the company that they worked for has changed hands, and they're much more, say, totalitarian than the company that they originally worked for. And so things have taken on something of a more fascist nature in their part of the galaxy, as far as how humans run things. And so once certain people in the medical industry realize that they have an alien individual amongst the group, they separate them from Acorna, and they are dead set on experimenting on her, as well as removing the horn from her head, because they're assuming that the horn itself is what's doing all these wondrous things, and they're not considering the fact that Acorna is the one who's doing it, and the horn is just say a kind of like a go-between between Acorna and where it is she's working with, as far as whether she's healing someone or decontaminating something. And so due to a couple of people who are sympathetic to Acorna's plight, as well as that of the miners, they help the prospectors get Acorna out of the medical experimentation that she was in danger of being a part of, and they go on the run. And eventually, the four of them make it to a planet called Kezdet, which is a notorious hotspot in the galaxy for groups of thieves that basically just have free sway on the planet, and there's a law all its own there that the usual peacekeepers of the galaxy kind of turn a blind eye to, but it's the only place that they think they'll be safe from the main human government that's running things in this part of the galaxy. So the four of them make it to Kezdet, and over a period of years, they form a new life there, and through very different occupations, and they're into the patronage of a gentleman by the name of Dazaki Lee, who is an elderly man who is suffering from a degenerative disease which has essentially paralyzed him, but he's one of the shrewdest individuals on the planet, and he's able to have maintained his family's empire, which is probably one of the biggest movers and shakers on the planet of thieves. And so while there's a lot of danger on the planet, the four of them have enjoyed Lee's patronage, and it turns out that Lee has a rather noble goal, because Kezdet's economy is in large part dependent on child slave labor, and so he's always been trying to do what he can to fight back against child slave labor. In fact, he has a whole plan that's thus far is only on the drawing board, but he's wanting to create a moon base that will be big enough to house the hundreds or thousands of children that have been forced into the slave labor on this planet. And so at this point it's just in the drawing board stages, but with the three prospectors and Acorna working together, they're able to make leaps and bounds in terms of the progress of how to actually make this dream a reality. But Acorna, though, is dead set on freeing every child slave on this planet, regardless of how long it takes or whatever the cost is. And because she in a lot of ways, she's a child herself, despite the fact that she has a faster rate of growth. But in terms of her childhood experience, she knows what it was like to say be on the run or be held captive with her experiences, and so when she finds out the full extent of the child slave labor on the planet, she realizes that she has a chance to, basically, free these children, from their bondage. But unfortunately, this whole operation is run by a mysterious figure by the name of the Piper, who is, as far as just about everyone on the planet is concerned, no one knows who the Piper is. They don't know what he looks like. They don't know his face or anything. But they do know that the Piper is someone who's higher up in the upper echelon of the planet's government, as well as the industry of the human empire in general. And so there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of political intrigue, plans within plans, and double crossing and bargaining that ensues, because you have multiple parties trying to go after Acorna for the mysterious healing properties that and abilities that she has. But also you have vengeful people who are going after the prospectors, the three prospectors, because they're the ones who got Acorna out of the experimentation that she was being forced into. And so you have all these parties, basically, with their own agendas, and eventually everything all just converges. But the question is, will Acorna and her three surrogate parents be able to, pull off what they're trying to do for the sake of the children on the planet, or are they going to, realize that, going up against a whole galaxy's worth of corruption on one planet is an impossible task, regardless of whether the goal is a noble one of freeing child slaves. And so yeah, this was a really cool book. I had a fun time reading it. I got caught up in what was going on. And one of the things I liked about it is that it is a science fiction novel, but there is an element of fantasy in the sense that with Acorna's abilities, they really harken back to the mythology of the unicorn in folklore and what have you. And that comes up in the story. And you definitely see that there's there might even be a connection. Her species might have visited Earth at some point and given inspiration to the myth of the unicorn. And so there's a lot of debate in universe whether there's a grain of truth to the unicorn myth. And also, I like the fact that there was some mystery that was established as far as, say, you do come to learn in the beginning of the book that Acorna's family were on the run from a hostile alien race, and they sacrificed their lives so that Acorna would have a chance and hopefully be picked up, which thankfully she was. But so that there's like a whole other universe out there, but you're only given just a tantalizing glimpse of it, and the focus of it is on the locations that the characters of Callum, Gil, and Rafik and Acorna go to. And so while they're trying to put some of the puzzle pieces together in regards to her past and where Acorna came from, you also get a sense of exploration as far as, say, the human empire and how it runs things within the galaxy. And so it's an at times fascinating place, but also a dangerous one, especially once they get to the planet of thieves, Kezdet, because you go to you picture the place, and in my mind I'm thinking of something like Mos Eisley, the cantina from the Mos Eisley cantina from Star Wars, a wretched hide of scum and villainy, except this is like a whole planet's worth, and very few people on the planet have the heart to do the moral and upright thing. And so Acorna and her friends, they actually build bridges and relationships with other people, such as say skimmers, who are basically like taxi drivers, as well as various people who conduct business on the planet in the markets, for clothing and technology and what have you. And so once they make these friendships and relationships connect, they find that they're able to have more sway and more pull when it comes to their ultimate plan, to help Lee out with his ultimate goal in establishing a colony on a moon for the children of Kezdet. And so I liked how there was a lot of this economic world building, as well as political intrigue and diplomatic intrigue as well. Um, but at the same time, there were definitely moments of suspense, especially when certain parties were going after Acorna, whether it be, say, um, covert government forces or individuals who have taken it upon themselves to go after Acorna, or the Piper's own, corrupt forces. And so, whenever it came to the aspect of, say, child labor, that's when things got really bleak, because you saw just how miserable the existence of the children were, and so, or the existence was, I should say. But you got to know some of these children in particular, and so you're hoping that they'll pull through and that they're going to be able to get out of their sorry situation. And thankfully, some of them are, with Acorna getting involved. But when you see what they have to contend with on a day-to-day basis, you're like, no child should have to, go through that. And then you find it, then you kind of remember that there are places in the world, where children are being forced to do stuff like that. Like, whether it be physical slave labor or, unfortunately, sexual slave labor. And thankfully, the latter part, it's only alluded to in the book, but they don't go into, gory detail on that part. But it's alluded that that is a danger that the kids face. And so when all that comes to light, you're pulling that much harder for Acorna and, her surrogate family to be able to, free the kids, and from the danger and captivity that they're in. And, the Piper and his forces, I thought, were very morally despicable characters. And we see just how corrupt, so many people on this planet are. Excuse me. It basically just, gets you upset, because, you see how innocent Acorna is, and you see, the genuine love and compassion that her surrogate family has for her and that she has for them. And so, you see these examples of, true moral good, and then you're, slapped in the face with, this chilling example of sadistic evil, courtesy of the Piper and, those working with him. And so I really liked how it just kind of pulled you all over the place in terms of, how you felt about certain situations and characters. And I definitely appreciate the fact that you got a sense of history with the place as well as with the galaxy, even though it was, say, in passing at times. It was established that there was a sense of world building at work here, and I really appreciated that. And considering that this is the first book in the series, Acorna did a pretty good job of world building in general. But there are also moments of levity and humor with some of the characters and some of the situations that they found themselves in. And I really liked how, in a lot of instances, the characters had to be fast on their feet in terms of, say, improvising, a way out of a situation, whether it be, straight up lie, or, maybe a lie with a hint of truth to it, or just plain old craftiness. And so when you see the payoff of some of those instances, it's at one point, it's kind of cheer-inducing, and then at the same time, you're just kind of cracking up at, what they kind of got away with. But yeah, overall, this was an excellent novel, and as far as, first book by Anne McCaffrey and Margaret Ball that I've read, it was a good one to start with, especially for Anne McCaffrey. So, and one of the things I also appreciated about the book is that while there are feminist themes, and there's definitely a feminist approach to the book, it's not done so in such a way to where it alienates, someone who's not a woman, or isn't, say, a feminist in and of a feminist themselves, or something like that. Like, you don't have to be one way or another just to be able to appreciate this book. You can definitely respect the themes and appreciate the themes, and pull for the characters to achieve their goals. But at the same time, while the writers definitely do a good job of not pulling any punches when it comes to, say, the evil that this world is made up of, the planet of thieves is made up of. They also go out of their way to show that it's not just Acorna that is the only, she's not the only morally upright character within the book, just because she's, say, almost magical in nature. I mean, she does have some characteristics that put her above her human family, but at the same time, the human family has strengths of their own that basically Acorna has to rely on them in some instances, and they have to rely on her in others. And so it kind of, I appreciate that depiction, I guess you could say, of the feminist side of things. I mean, it kind of made me think of, in some ways, it made me think of the first Wonder Woman movie with Gal Gadot, and in the sense that it was definitely a feminist movie, but at the same time, they were also going out of their way to show that there were instances where Chris Pine's character, Steve Trevor, had the advantage in terms of how he knew how the world worked, whereas she didn't. And so it's like there were instances where the two of them kind of had to rely on each other. So Acorna was very similar. Like I said, definitely a feminist themed book, but at the same time not to the point of, say, alienating a male audience. And so I appreciated that about the book as well. It was a positive portrayal of feminism, basically where it's like teamwork was necessary. Anyway, though, I'm going to go ahead and give Acorna 5 out of 5 stars. This was an excellent book, and as far as first book that I read by Anne McCaffrey, I really enjoyed it. And once again, thank you to my stepmom Barbara for letting me borrow it. So also I was going to show you all the cover art here. So you got the front, then you got the back. And I think that's like one of the skimmer ships. But anyway, though, I definitely would like to see more of Acorna's world, because the way the book ends, it ends on a note where it's good as a standalone novel, but at the same time, there's just enough established to where it's made clear that there are still stories to be told in this universe. And so thankfully, more stories were told, as there was a whole series, for her character and her family. And so, once again, Acorna, the Unicorn Girl, 5 out of 5 stars. It was an excellent novel, and I'm glad to have, been able to read it. And so, thank you very much for taking the time to check out my review. You got any questions, comments, please drop a line and let me know. And if you like what you see here, please feel free to like and subscribe. So, y'all have a good night. Take care. Bye.